Got a question here. I'm currently scoring 159 on my LSAT practice tests, with reading comprehension being my weakest section. In contrast, I perform quite well in logic games. I'm interested in learning how to apply the logic and structured approach of logic games to reading comprehension to improve both my understanding and speed. What specific strategies or methodologies can I use to approach reading comp passages with the same analytical mindset as logic games? Okay, interesting idea there. So yes, there are some commonalities between logic games and reading comp, namely that they are groupings of questions. So rather than logical reasoning, where everything is bite-sized and independent, a grab bag of randomness, in both logic games and reading comp, you have a set of questions all around a core set of ideas or rules. Logic games, of course, we have the rules. Reading comprehension, we have the passage text itself. So in both cases, we are making an upfront investment in understanding a core set of guiding material that will then apply to the questions associated. Logic games, you have roughly 5 or 6 questions per game. In reading comprehension, you have roughly 6 or 7 questions per passage. Each of them has an orientation or warm-up style question. In logic games, it is literally called orientation question. In reading comprehension, it's called the main idea question. So in reading comprehension, you want to solve that gimme orientation question first. So as in logic games, I recommend approaching the questions out of order, in the order that works best for you to help you layer your understanding. So in logic games, I recommend doing the orientation question first, then the local if questions that ask you, for example, if X is on slot 3, then what else must be true? And finally, doing the global general questions that are open-ended, like which one of the following must be true. In reading comprehension, I recommend also approaching the questions out of order, doing that main idea type question first. So this is actually a global, general in nature sort of question. Main idea, primary purpose, passage organization, best title, tone, author's opinion. We're doing all the general global questions first. Then we're doing the more local if style questions, or that would have been line reference questions in the paper version of the LSAT that require going back to the passage text to help you solve a specific question. And finally, the more inferential questions that require a bit more reading between the lines. So in summary, the first strategy I'd recommend for you is to approach the questions in reading comp out of order, just like I recommend approaching the questions in logic games out of order. Now, when it comes to the passage text, I also recommend slowing down, making sure you understand that passage text thoroughly before you would even start approaching the questions. Just like in logic games, we take time to slow down, diagram the rules properly, and make inferences before going into the questions. A lot of times, students are too quick to jump into the questions without making sure they thoroughly understand the passage text or thoroughly understand the nature of the game, or like what game type it is, for example. So as is often the advice for the LSAT, slow down, read more carefully, double check and triple check your understanding if necessary before going on to the questions. You want to get the lay of the land. So for logic games, you want to know, is it an ordering game? Is it a grouping game? Is it a combination game? Is it a pattern? Is it a curveball? In reading comprehension, of course, there are 4 general topics: natural science, social science, humanities, and law. But also we have argument structures for passages. Like, is it an old understanding followed by a new understanding of something? Or is it 2 viewpoints that are in conflict, or a later viewpoint updating an earlier viewpoint? How many people are parties in this passage advocating different viewpoints? I have a structure for approaching reading comp passages where we look for what are the viewpoints, meaning the opinions, theories, hypotheses, essentially the conclusions presented in the passage. Then we have the evidence supporting those viewpoints, like details, supporting examples. Oftentimes these come in the form of lists. And then we have the advocates, meaning who, if anyone, is promoting a particular position. So you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of each of these factors before getting into the questions. Again, not just jumping right into the questions, hoping they will clear things up. If anything, if you jump into the questions without knowing the viewpoints, the evidence, and the advocates, then you're likely going to be lost and even potentially further overwhelmed once you get into the questions. So 2 major strategies you can take here to solve reading comprehension passages like logic games. One is, as with logic games, approach the questions out of order, in the order that works best for you to help layer your understanding. In reading comprehension, it's general global questions first, like main idea, primary purpose and such, then the local detail-oriented questions, and finally, the more inferential questions. Then secondly, take the time to slow down and get the lay of the land first before getting into the questions by making sure that you know, first and foremost, what are the different viewpoints presented, evidence, what supporting details are promoting those viewpoints, and finally, who, if anyone, is advocating those viewpoints. That's all for now. Hope you found this video helpful, and in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.